Hey, how's it going guys? It's Nate here. And Skyrim is an RPG with what at times feels like an infinite number of quests, characters, books, and factions. And all these aspects have their own stories to tell. Whether it's the main questline's tale of fending off a dragon conquest, or the simple gossip you can overhear innkeepers chat about, there's always some more lore to learn in the Elder Scrolls V. However, sometimes the stories we hear and information we can uncover sort of conflicts with itself, creating weird paradoxes in the game's narrative. We call these instances plot holes, and they're usually the result of oversight by the game's writers. And I find some of them to be incredibly interesting. So today we'll be taking a look at 5 hilarious plot holes that make absolutely no sense in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Starting off, we have the curious case of random Dark Brotherhood assassins. You see, before the Dragonborn completes the quest, with friends like these, in which Astrid kidnaps you and ultimately initiates the Dovahkiin into the Dark Brotherhood, one potential random encounter you may run into centers around an unnamed Dark Brotherhood assassin who will attack the Dragonborn. Now, being the chosen one and everything, thwarting this attacker and murdering them to death shouldn't be an especially difficult task. And on their body will be a note, which reads as follows, quote, "As instructed, you are to eliminate, insert player name here, by any means necessary. The Black Sacrament has been performed. Somebody wants this poor fool dead. We've already received payment for the contract. Failure is not an option. Signed, Astrid." Someone placed a contract on you. The trouble here is that if the guild has already agreed to a deal to kill you, why do they then later on in the game let you join them and completely forget about it? The Dark Brotherhood sort of has a reputation for always honoring their deals and taking out those they promised to, especially if the person's already prepaid. So, in your case, are they just making an exception? Does the person who put the hit on you get a refund? Perhaps credit towards another killing? The game completely dodges this series of questions. Even when you do join them, Astrid and all the other members curiously never even mention the fact that they were actively trying to hunt you beforehand. In reality, Bethesda probably just created that random encounter as a way to introduce us to the fact that the Dark Brotherhood's a very much active organization in Skyrim, and encourage us to learn more about them, without putting too much additional thought into it. But nonetheless, by doing this, the developers appear to have inadvertently created some very awkward conflicts of interest, and a tense working environment too. Next on our list, during the events of the Dawnguard DLC, we venture into the Soul Cairn, a depressing realm where the spirits of individuals who have been soul-trapped are forced to ruffle around for all of eternity. One of the phantoms we can meet here is a fellow named Saint Jib, and he has quite the backstory. Indeed, Jib was the first character players would see upon starting a playthrough of the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. He was a fellow inmate aboard our prison ship in Vardenfell, and we only got to see him for a second as we got off. But apparently, between the events of that game and Skyrim, the fellow got himself soul-trapped. In the Cairn, Jib explains that after being released from jail, he actually decided to turn his life around. He wanted to give back to the world. So, the Dark Elf went on a crusade against Cliff Racers. Cliff Racers were a horrifying pesky breed of flying creatures that Morrowind players know all too well. But in Skyrim, Jib explains that once he became a free man, he personally hunted the birds into extinction.
It became quickly apparent that the best way I could help would be by wiping out the Cliff Racers. Indeed I was. I hunted down and killed every last one of them. It took years.
Seriously, he killed every single one of them. For such a feat, the people of Morrowind declared him a saint, and Jib became a hero. Sometime after this, the Oblivion Crisis began, and Jib was soul-trapped by a Daedra, so his party was cut a bit short, and he ended up here. However, the thing is, Jib didn't kill all of the Cliff Racers. At least not according to vanilla Skyrim, because there's a follower you can recruit named Miol the Lioness, who may randomly say the following line of dialogue.
When I was young, I journeyed with my father on hunting expeditions into Morrowind. The Cliff Racers made for excellent sport.
Jib claims the Cliff Racers were all gone by the time the Oblivion Crisis began, over 200 years ago. and Miol seems to be in her 20s or 30s. So was Jib just lying to us? Did he do none of the things he claimed? Sure, that would make Jib a jerk, but at least it would make sense as an explanation. Well, that's probably not accurate either, because in the Dragonborn DLC, we can recruit an elderly Dunmer follower named Teldrin Sero, who claims to have met Jib long ago, and still refers to him as a saint.
I wonder what became of Saint Geob. I met him once, you know.
So Jib was probably telling the truth. And Miol is such a kind-hearted character, I know she wouldn't lie. So what's the deal here? Are cliff racers actually gone? Well, the most likely explanation behind this plot hole is that Miol was a character introduced in the vanilla game, and her comment about hunting cliff racers is such a small and insignificant one, Bethesda probably forgot or just disregarded it when writing out Jib as a character for the Dawnguard DLC. So, in Bethesda's canon going forward, cliff racers are probably extinct. But the conflicting writing has technically left their status up in the air. Coming at number 3, how exactly do the authorities handle imprisoning mages? When guards arrest someone in Skyrim, they generally confiscate a prisoner's belongings, including any weapons, and give them nothing but rags, ensuring that the jailed person won't be able to engage in any funny business, and especially not hurt anyone. However, this logic doesn't seem applicable if the person you're putting behind bars is someone gifted in the arcane arts, as they need no weapons to cause a ruckus, and can simply cast flames or ice magic from their fingertips. Indeed, Skyrim doesn't make much of an effort to address this glaring security flaw. And even if the player is arrested, you can actually resort to using magic in order to aid your escape. In fact, arguably one of the most effective ways to break out of a prison cell if you're out of lockpicks is to simply cast a flame spell on a guard and cause them to aggro on you, which will always result in them running up to the player's cell and opening it right up to attack you. Furthermore, during Windhelm's murder mystery quest, Blood on the Ice, there's even a path the player can take that'll result in the city's literal court wizard being put behind bars, and absolutely zero precautions taken to counteract the fact that he knows magic. Now, believe it or not, while one may not be present in Skyrim, Morrowind had a solution to this problem. That game would see prisoners transported with a special set of bracers equipped that would both act as handcuffs and had a constant Drain Magicka enchantment that would be working on the wearer, ensuring no arcane powers could be used. But law enforcement in Skyrim seems to have completely rejected taking such a measure, and it's unclear why. Perhaps they just trust mages to be respectful or something when they're in prison for committing crimes. For 4th spot, Rorik is a Nord farmer, and founder of a small village named after him called Roricksted. Speak to him, and he'll explain that many years ago, shortly after the Great War ended, he and a fellow veteran decided to settle down and buy some land in the area. They began farming, and soon realized that their area was granting them massively bountiful harvests. Eventually, a whole little community began to spring up around them, and over a short while, Rorickstead grew into what it is today. So this whole community is relatively new, at least in the grand scheme of everything. About 20 years old, give or take. Or is it? Because in the book, The Holdings of King Jarlund, which is essentially a survey of the hold of Whiterun a couple millennia ago during the Merethic era, when it was ruled by a fellow named Jarlund, you'll find that a place called Rorickstedding is described exactly as it appears in the Elder Scrolls V. 3 farms, check. Inn, check. Same name? Pretty much check. On top of that, a seemingly ancient song many bards across Skyrim's various taverns play is called Ragnar the Red, and it describes the misadventures of a man named, well, Ragnar the Red, who came riding from Whiterun to Ol Rorickstead.
The security in Whiterun
There
is
once was a
terrible.
hero named
Shameful is
Ragnar
what
the
it is.
Red who came riding to Whiterun from old Rorickstead.
Clearly, Rorickstead has existed for quite some time, likely thousands of years. So, unless it burned down or something 20 years ago, and that same plot of land just happened to have been purchased by another fellow named Rorik, it seems the tale he tells us doesn't hold up. And finally, last on our list, how the heck are so many candles lit in ancient Nord ruins that have supposedly been untouched for centuries? Seriously, it's not just lit candles. There's also somehow oftentimes fresh fruit in what should be 1,000-year-old barrels. And no matter the ruin you go to, septims are going to be lying all over the place, despite the fact that the Septim Empire literally didn't exist at the time many of these dungeons were constructed. None of this makes any sense. Well, okay, actually there might be a pretty good explanation for the candles, but nothing else. In Skyrim, there exists a book titled Amongst the Draugr. It was a report written many years ago by a professor at the College of Winterhold that describes his observations when sneaking around an ancient Nordic ruin. He states that after watching them for a few weeks, he realized that the Draugr weren't just guarding these tombs, they were actually maintaining them. Dusting coffins, cleaning tables, repairing structural flaws. Therefore, it's reasonable to assume that the Draugr aren't in Nordic ruins just to defend them, but also perform some upkeep. That could include keeping candles lit. Though this still doesn't explain why septims are lying all over these dungeons, or how fruits are able to stay fresh long past the end of their shelf life. Maybe we don't need an explanation though. As a wise man once said, sometimes it just works. And on that note, we are going to wrap up my top 5 hilarious plot holes that make no sense in The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Which of these did you find to be the most intriguing? And do you have your own potential explanations worked out behind some of them that I just didn't consider? Leave a comment down below. As always, like ratings are very much appreciated. Again, thanks for watching, and I hope to catch you all in my next video. Peace out, everyone.